Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GDT Live presented by Game Day Tarps podcast. My name is Dayton Kamal. Alongside me is Colton Davies. Today, we've got a good one. Adam Kierszenblat from the WHL and the Vancouver Canucks is the Hockey News' writer for them. He's hopping on for a good episode today. Colton, first off, I want to talk about the Pete DeBoer firing. That's the big one in the news this morning. We talked about it the other day. What are your thoughts on that? Did it need to happen?
Well, you can't throw your player, your team, your goaltender under the bus, right? And that's what Pete did. Did it twice. Did it after game 5, I think it was, where he threw the team under the bus in the press conference, and then proceeded to do so with Otter. I know I said on the podcast that everyone should just take a month or 3 weeks to just kind of rest and think about it, but I don't know. Tom Ghilardi is a hard business owner. It's about success. I think that they just took him and Jim Nill took a long, hard, thought process behind this. And I don't know. It's just an interesting firing because DeBoer has brought them to like a point where they're successful. So for me, it's just like it makes sense from the point of him throwing everybody under the bus, but at the same time, it almost seems like they like they went with it too quickly, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does seem pretty fresh, seeing that it was like last week that it happened. But
yeah,
I think maybe there was some other factors that led into it. Maybe there was some players talking. I know we said that maybe some players weren't too happy on the podcast the other day, but that's another story.
Well, and the thing too is like, I found it funny that in a sense that he got fired today because a lot of those head coaching jobs have been fulfilled, right? So are any of those teams that have filled a head coaching position in the last 2 weeks now going, wait a minute, Pete DeBoer's available? Like, yeah, you got to wonder about that, right? You have a coach of his stature now available. It's similar to like what happened with Jim Montgomery, right? In St. Louis. He gets fired out of Boston. All of a sudden, St. Louis just goes, well, wait a minute. We had no, intention of firing Drew Bannister. But then one morning we woke up and Monty was available. So we make that change. Does that happen with DeBoer now? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I think that very well could be possible, seeing like the success he's brought teams over the past few seasons, especially the Stars in the playoffs. But I don't know. I think we'll wait for the offseason, see what happens. But let's talk about Game 2 tonight really quick. What are you expecting from Game 2?
To McDavid to go off again. It's Draisaitl had his big game. He had his 2 goals. I fully expect McDavid to put home 2 tonight and just keep that place rocking. It kind of seems like the Oilers are in a realm of their own at the moment compared to Florida. Just they're really gunning for it this time. So I like to see Edmonton pick up another solid win tonight. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely think if anyone's going to be going again, for me, it's going to be that Draisaitl and McDavid connection, like we saw.
Yeah.
For Florida, I really think they have to get back to their game plan and just working on hemming teams in their own end. I know it might be tough against Edmonton. Their game style worked really well in the last round, but man, Edmonton's a different team, and they showed it. Even being down 3-1, they can still come back and fight, and they're gonna fight. Connor McDavid said it, so yeah, I see maybe Edmonton bringing it out another 2-0 series lead here tonight.
Absolutely. All right. We talked about coaches. We talked about coaching changes. Let's bring on Adam now. He's, of course, writes with the Hockey News for the Vancouver Canucks and the Vancouver Giants. And the Canucks, of course, have made coaching changes recently as well. So we're going to talk to him about that and pick his brain. So let's bring Adam on.
All right. Welcome on. All right, everybody. Adam Kierszenblat, the WHL and Vancouver, the Hockey News. Adam, how's it going today?
Good. Don't worry. You're not the only one to mess it up. Yesterday on the Adam Foote Zoom, I think I was Canucks Army, Canucks hockey, and then hockey news. So don't worry, it happens all the time.
Well, speaking of Adam Foote, let's get your opinion on that. There's a new coach in now with Vancouver. Their whole Rick Tocchet era is over. What do you make of Adam Foote now stepping in as head coach?
Well, Adam Foote is one of the coaches that is really admired among the players. So when we were talking to players last year, and we'd always ask them, "What do you think of this coaching staff?" Because obviously the coaching staff, when you have Tocchet, Gonchar, the Sedins, Foote, that's a lot of experience. So whenever we talk to the players, they always specifically mention Foote, what he was able to bring to that organization, how much they appreciated him. We have Quinn Hughes on the record saying that Foote's one of the best coaches that he's ever had. And so far the messaging is really positive. When Rick Tocchet was here, we didn't really hear a lot of like positivity towards a guy like Elias Pettersson. That's completely opposite with Foote. Foote was on the radio in Vancouver this morning and talked about how last week Pettersson flew over and him, Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko basically had a couple days where they went golfing, had dinner, had meetings about like next year. And it's just it's a more positive kind of environment now based off of what Foote is saying. It's a lot of what happened in the past is in the past. We understand what we need to do. We understand what we need to do to get there. And you know, it's kind of refreshing to hear. Now, if it doesn't work on the ice, that's the biggest question. But so far, just kind of everything that we've heard Foote say, there's a lot of positivity. It seems like he really wants to do this correctly. He talked about meeting the families of all the players, having kind of everybody, not just the players be a team, but the families be a team as well. So
Yep.
we'll see, I guess, how that translates to the ice, because that's the most important part.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you make of the assistant coaches that were kind of brought on to the coaching staff yesterday as well?
Kevin Dean, great coach. We know his track record. This is a guy who helped develop guys like Torrey Krug, Charlie McAvoy. He has a connection with Derek Forbert, which I don't think you can draw a connection between Forbert re-signing and Dean being hired. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
those two things can match up pretty well. McLean, we'll see what happens. That he didn't have a lot of success in Iowa, but they don't have they had a lot of injuries. They didn't have the strongest team, so we'll see what happens. McLean's going to run the power play. Dean's going to run the penalty kill, and then Scott Young is a guy who's been in the organization for a couple years. He was in Pittsburgh before. He's been behind the bench at the Olympics. So we'll see how that translates from a director of player personnel to the coaching staff. According to the Foote, he's going to be somebody who does special projects, and called him a glue guy. So kind of
Yeah.
the stuff around the edges, working with the Sedins, working with Marco is their goaltending coach. So I think he's more of like, he's going to be on the bench. He's going to be an assistant. He'll probably be helping out with the forwards, I'm assuming, because Dean will work on the defense. He might even be an eye in the sky. We'll see exactly how they do this bench. But I think that what Foote has done is he's really specified what everybody is going to do. He's brought in people who should have skill levels that help different areas, and it's going to be a very controlled bench, I feel like.
Adam, we've talked a lot about the new season, this season coming up. Who are some of the guys that maybe are on your radar, or guys that could make a stamp on this roster?
Well, when we look at just everybody, we're focusing a lot on Abbotsford right now because they're one win away from the Calder Cup. This would be Canucks have made the Calder Cup final before when they were Utica about 10 years ago. So, but they haven't won as Abbotsford. So when you're looking at the Abbotsford Canuck roster right now, Victor Mancini is a name that comes up a lot. He is playing every position, every situation. He's become a massive fan favorite. There are fan cams and fan accounts within the Vancouver market about Victor Mancini already. He's a guy who is projected to be at least pushing for a spot in training camp. Maybe what we'll see is we might see Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, and Victor Mancini like in a rotation where Derek Forbert, because he can play both sides of the ice.
Yep.
You have Forbert as your 5, and then Mancini and Pettersson as your 6. Just rotating depending on opponent. Tom Willander, obviously, we don't know exactly what the plan is there. It's very possible he could start in the AHL, just like Jonathan Lekkerimaki, who's another player. We'll see what happens with Lekkerimaki. He hasn't had the best playoffs. He had he missed some games due to oral surgery. He was scratched in the last game. We don't know 100% if it was performance related or if there's something going on. But Lekkerimaki is a player, especially since they're projected to lose Besser and Suter. Lekkerimaki is a player that they want to step up. And then you look at guys like Linus Karlsson. Karlsson's going to be on their 4th line next year. Atu Ratu, that's probably your 4th line center next year. Then guys like Max Sasson, Archie Bain. So there's a lot of guys that you can foresee on the roster next year. A lot of young guys pushing for spots. Maybe not at the top of the lineup, but there's definitely going to be a lot of competition on that 4th line.
Yeah, it's safe to say that the Canucks are definitely going to be a work in progress for the next year or so.
Before
you have Quinn Hughes. So
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that is fair.
I mean, like, the Canucks weren't a great team this year, and Quinn Hughes is nominated for the Norris, right? So like it's one of those, and Thatcher Demko will hopefully be healthy. You'll hopefully get a healthy elite. Like, yes, they're a work in progress, but they have arguably the best defenseman in the NHL who can carry the team, who almost carried the team to the playoffs. So it's kind of like a weird, they're not in a rebuild and they're not in a real tool and they're not a contender. They're like in a 4th category that nobody else is in.
Right.
So we'll see kind of what happens there.
Colton, did you have something there you wanted to add?
I wanted to touch on Elias Pettersson, the forward. Let's talk a little bit about him because you and I have talked a lot privately over texts this season. His season didn't go as planned as everybody was hoping for, and certain media members gave him shit throughout the year. What do you kind of see the plan being for Petey? Because one thing I noticed today when I opened up Twitter was he wasn't on the marketing campaign ad, Adam. What does that mean?
Okay, so I don't think people seem to remember that the Canucks sent out a marketing ad like after the season and Pettersson was on it. So my understanding is that they're just trying to rotate through the players. Like, you can say Demko wasn't on it, or Tyler Myers wasn't on it, or Marcus Pettersson. Like, they can only put 4 players. And I get the whole, Pettersson is one of your faces of the franchise, but like, at the moment, I think it's a smart idea from a marketing perspective, maybe not to put him on, because there are people, fans and certain media members like across who still don't believe that he was actually injured this season, and that it was all an effort, like he doesn't care, which, I mean, we all know isn't true. But like, this is a guy who went he needed to be better. Let's just put it like that. It's not an excuse to say he was injured multiple times throughout the year. He had 4 injuries, plus he had the flu after the 4 Nations. Like, there's cause and causation, right? Like, it's not like, saying that he's injured is not being like, we excuse everything that happened. He was good defensively. He couldn't produce offensively. He needs to be better. But the fact that, the team asked him to stay in Vancouver after the season, he did that. He's meeting with Foote. He's meeting with Hughes. He's meeting with Demko. He's being mentioned in the leadership group by Foote. Like, it's clear that while some may not be still put together that, like I said, cause and causation, it's clear that Foote understands what happened. Even Foote today, he mentioned, he's like, yeah, Pettersson went through a lot. He went through the whole Miller situation, which we don't have to rehash because we've done it. I've done it enough times this year. He's gone through the injuries. Now it's, can he bounce back? And it's really a give and take. Like, this whole, when Tocchet went on radio and was saying, "Oh, you need to make a schedule for Pettersson," and people freaked out about that. But it's like that's a coach's job. A coach's job is to make sure that every player has a schedule, that every player that you're getting the most out of your players. So it's all like, so there's a lot of anger towards Pettersson, and I understand that because he's the highest paid player on the team. He's one of the highest paid players in the league for now. We all know that that's going to change as the cap goes up. But this whole concept of trade him for a bag of pucks is just kind of dumb. And like, if I like the second that they trade Pettersson, he's gonna be nominated for the Selke. Like, let's just put it, because that's how Canuck luck works. If he goes to Carolina, they're winning the cup. Like we don't have to like beat around the bush here. Like, Carolina wants him for a reason. And I was always told that if Carolina is pushing to get a player for 3 or 4 years, don't trade them to Carolina because there's a reason. So, I mean, yeah, look, he's at his best, he's a Selke performer, and he's probably like a 90 to 95 point player. Like, he's never going to be Barkov because Barkov is just like a unicorn that doesn't exist in the league, basically, outside of him. But he can be like a Bergeron, essentially. Like, when he came into the league, people said that he reminded them of Pavel Datsyuk. Like,
right.
So we'll see. If his knee is sorted out, his oblique is sorted out, he's training hard in Sweden. He made it very clear that he was unhappy this year with what happened and that he's going to do everything he can to get back. So I know that they have to make a decision in a month or so about if they want to trade him or not, but trading him is not the right move. If you look at everything kind of as a whole.
This was kind of a big topic throughout the season, Adam. Whether it be long-term, short-term, in the near future, do you ever see one of the Hughes brothers, if not both of the Hughes brothers, or maybe go the other way? Maybe Quinn leaves and something comes back. Do you ever see something like that happening?
Well, it's funny because Rutherford and his accidental tampering saying that they might trade for the Hughes brothers. Look, we're in a weird situation here with Quinn Hughes, where it's clear that Quinn wants to be here. It's clear that Quinn embraces the captaincy. Like, he's talked about it enough. And it's also clear that he's created connections here. Like, him and Pettersson are really good friends. Him and Demko are good friends. Him and Besser are good. Like, this is the only organization in the NHL he's known. He's also pushed back a little bit on this I want to play with my brothers thing. I think, he's never, like, according to Rutherford, he never specifically told the Canucks that. Well, I don't know, maybe if there was something lost in translation there, but yeah, I mean, we could see a Quinn Hughes, like, in theory, we could see a Quinn Hughes trade, not this season, but the season after. I think it all depends on what happens this year. Like, if they go on a run, if they, finish second in the Pacific or first in the Pacific, and they go to the second or third round, and Quinn can see that they are building a contender, then that changes the conversation. If New Jersey crashes and burns, that changes the conversation. But I mean, one team, if we're really talking hypothetical trades, and I know that some clickbait website is probably going to pull this and be like, Canucks reporter, Quinn Hughes trade, whatever. If we're really thinking about it, I don't know if it's New Jersey that they have to worry about. I wonder if it's Detroit that they have to worry about, because Detroit is where he lives in the off season. Went to University of Michigan. So if we are going down where does Quinn maybe want to play, if he doesn't want to play in Vancouver, which I do think he wants to play in Vancouver, I would keep an eye on Detroit in the future.
Okay. Now, another question. What would be like a package deal that would have to come in order for Quinn Hughes to leave?
So I was told, because I've had these conversations with different people. So I was told that you start with 3 first-round picks. And then it's like, because this is these type of players don't get traded.
Right.
So you would start with like 3 first-round picks. If it's New Jersey, it's like Simo Nemec, it's Dawson Mercer, maybe even Nico Hischier, because remember Hischier's contract, if New Jersey's going to go all in on Hughes, Hischier's contract expires the same year as Quinn Hughes. So in theory, if you're giving Hughes $15-16 million, which is very possible because of how the cap is going up, you might not be able to afford Hischier anymore.
Right.
So I mean, it's gonna, if they ever went down this route, it'd be one of the biggest trades in NHL history, just because just because of the superstar bringing Hughes in and what that would, like, if it's New Jersey, what that would do to the entire market having 3 Hugheses on your team.
Yeah, that would definitely bring some fans in, that for sure. Jersey sales would go up, I think. Look at the cover they did for EA Sports this year. All 3 of them sitting together in a locker room on the NHL cover. That sold. So
yeah, and one big question, if Hughes gets traded to New Jersey, what number does Luke have to wear now?
Oh, good point.
84. Oh, that's a good one. Let's talk a little bit about the WHL. And let's talk about Crosby Matejchuk. Because his picture that they've posted, it looks like a mugshot for a 25-year-old man. So have you got to meet him and talk to him?
I haven't had the chance yet because while some teams do developmental camps in the summer, the Giants don't. Yeah. So we'll meet up with him, in September, I believe. But this is a good pick by the Vancouver Giants. They need guys like him, gritty guys, guys that you can really develop over a couple years. We know the bloodline is strong already there with Denton Matejchuk. So always having that kind of older brother or older sibling that is in professional, like when you talk to younger players and they have that, connection, whether it is their brother, their father, their uncle, whatever, it does help because they get to know like the draft process, what you need to do in junior. Like when you go from CSSHL or whatever league you came from to the WHL, there is a big difference. So yeah, just having that foundation is pretty good. And I'm excited to see how he does this year. Definitely be monitoring. I believe he's going back to the CSSHL, but he's definitely going to be called up because that's kind of how the Giants like to do that, around Christmas time. And then at the end of the year, that's kind of their prospect call-ups time in the past. We'll see what happens though, because they're looking for a new GM. They're looking for a new coaching staff. So maybe things will change up a bit here, but overall it was a good pick. And I mean, I got to tweet out Crosby's headed to Vancouver, which, if you followed the Vancouver market for the last couple years, it's all been about when is Sidney Crosby coming to the Vancouver Canucks?
A different Crosby, hey?
Yeah.
Adam, it's not WHL, but it is CHL, and it is a prospect for the Vancouver Canucks. Sean Carrier, you wrote an article about him. I want to know what you think of him as a 18-year-old, second year in the QMJHL. He put up decent numbers, but what are your thoughts on him?
Well, when you're drafting late in the draft, you try to go for upside. You try to go for guys that have, attributes that you could see at least playing out at the pro level. And Sean Carrier is kind of like that. He's very physical. He does have a little bit of offense. That's a guy who he's like most, 6th, 7th round picks, potentially. That's a guy who needs to develop a little bit more. But I mean, anytime you can add some speed, some physicality, a guy with a high motor who just doesn't give up on plays, strong forechecker, that's kind of what you should target near the end of the draft. And Sean Carey kind of fits that mold. Like one of the big talking points in Vancouver is like, do we have enough grit on this team? Do we have enough players that are going to get in on the forecheck? You have a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, he the hit king of the NHL, but like they need to add a little bit more grit and become a little more difficult to play with on the forward side. The defense group is a physical group, but the forwards are kind of lacking that. That also had to do with Dakota Joshua this year, which we all know. He had a tough year going recovering from cancer and then dealing with a lot of injuries. But if he can bounce back, that's added grit. But you also want the next generation to have some grit. Like they don't really have a ton of prospects who have that grit level in the system. So adding a guy like Carrier, even if he can play at the, like that's a guy who projects at the fourth line if he makes the NHL. So there's your grit right there. There's somebody who's going to throw some big hits at the AHL level, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely see him. If he does excel somewhere, it would probably be the AHL for sure, but it would be a great pick down the line in the draft.
Yeah. And speaking of the QMJHL,
we got a question from.
Oh,
yep.
Sorry. Speaking of the QMJHL,
no, go for it. What's up? You talked about.
Sorry,
go for it.
I'll just throw this in about the QMJHL. They're actually going to be moving over to Flow Sports this year, so that came down the pipeline just now, earlier today, and they're going to make an announcement soon. So if you're watching QMJHL next year, I think you need to get a Flow Sports deal, which is a great deal because you get the AHL, ECHL, BCHL, everything like that. So yeah, if you want to watch QMJHL hockey next year, Flow Sports is the way to go.
Okay. So they're going to be going away. They're not going to be going away from CHL TV app, are they?
I don't know how that works because I know that the WHL playoffs are still available on the CHL TV app, even though they were on Victory Plus. So
right.
I think they're going to have. I think it depends on what the OHL does next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to see. I actually had no idea. You say it just came out today. It probably happened at the draft, which is just going on right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Colton, you had something you brought up there. You want to bring up that comment from Randy?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just having some internet issues for a sec back there. Randy wants to know, can the Canucks really afford to trade Quinn Hughes?
Can anybody afford to trade Quinn Hughes? I think that's like, that's kind of like the sentiment, right? At this point, like, if you trade Quinn Hughes, you're going into a rebuild. Let's just put it like that. Like, Elias Pettersson is great at his best, but Quinn Hughes is Quinn Hughes. If you can afford to get you can afford to trade Quinn Hughes if you get like 7 assets back. Let's just like 7 high-end assets back. That's how you can afford to trade Quinn Hughes. If they trade Quinn Hughes, it would be very disappointing, obviously, because that's a guy who is going to be in the, like, if he plays another like 2-3 years, we're talking about, is his number going to be retired in the rafters, like, when he retires. So we'll see. I mean, I love watching Quinn Hughes, like, and I think that we're spoiled in Vancouver because when I talk to people in other markets, they're like, oh my gosh, this Quinn Hughes guy is so amazing. Like, he's doing all these spins. And to us, we kind of just sit in the press box like, oh yeah, that's just a norm. It's just normal for Quinn to start on the right side, spin past 2 defenders, bring the puck down and roof it backhand on a goaltender. That's just a normal play. But like everybody else around the league is like completely shocked. So I think that, it's like the, what you don't know what you got till it's gone situation with Quinn Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, any team that trades him is probably going into a rebuild right away.
Well, Adam, that makes sense.
Let's go back to the CHL for a little bit. We try to focus a little bit on CHL, and we've got a few viewers in here that are learning about the CHL. So let's talk about the Vancouver Giants. I know you write about them, and they've got a guy that I'm pretty high on, Cameron Schmidt. What can you tell me about him?
Well, Schmidt is an interesting prospect. So we all know about his offensive dynamic. Like, he's one of the fastest skaters in the WHO. He has amazing shots. He was given more and more responsibility as the season went on, and he started developing that playmaking ability. So he's definitely a high potential player. So he has a really high ceiling. But the question is, can he add to his game? Can he become a little bit more stronger along the boards? Can he become better defensively? Because right now he's a lot of he likes to jump the play, and that's normal at the WHL level for these type of guys who have blazing speed. So can he commit a little bit more defensively? Can he be that first guy back on rushes? So if you're looking at him from a potential perspective, he's probably near the top of the draft in scoring potential at an NHL level, but he needs to keep developing the rest of his game. There's also, people are going to look at his size. Like he's not, I don't know exactly what they have him listed at. I think it's 5'8" or 5'9". Like I don't know if he's going to grow, but he needs to bulk up essentially. So he can't be in that 150, 160 range. He's probably got to be in that 175 range. But I mean, we've seen it like Seth Jarvis, Logan Stankoven, like smaller guy, Niels Höglander, Connor Garland, like smaller guys can excel at the NHL level, but they need to have secondary areas to their game. They can't be all offense. They need to have that defensive structure in there.
Yeah.
So if Schmidt can develop that part, I think he'll have a successful career in a top 6 role somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely think Schmidt was someone that impressed me this summer at the U18s or the Ivan Holenka when he was on a part of that team. That was a great showing for him. He really showed out there.
Well, it's also the international ice helps a little bit when you're that fast and you have that much extra room. Stuff like that will help. But yeah, like I said, if he needs to develop that defensive side of his game, and also we need to with Schmidt when he's going. Like he's almost unstoppable when he's going, but he needs to stretch that out a little bit. So he can be dynamic in the third period, but can he be dynamic if a team is down 2-0 in the first? Like, so there's a lot he has some steps that he needs to take to develop just his overall consistency and everything like that. But like I said, once he figures that out, he's going to be dynamite in the NHL.
Is there anybody that kind of sparks your interest coming into this season for the Canucks? I know you guys said you don't hold any summer development camps. So come September, is there anybody that you're kind of going to have your eye on as a prospect in the WHL?
So for the Giants, I'm really interested to see what Ryan Lynn does this year because, this is a guy who was nominated for Rookie of the Year in the WHL. He is a projected top 10 pick. It's funny because when I talked to him, so he's from Richmond, BC. He's a massive Quinn Hughes fan. Like he watches Quinn Hughes tape. And I talked to him about it because he had this play where he did a spin at the blue line and juked out a defender basically. And I asked him after the game, I was like, where'd you learn that? And he's like, I learned it from watching like Quinn Hughes. And I was like, okay. So like, this is a guy who wants to be the next Quinn Hughes. I'm really excited about that. Aaron Obifo is another guy. This is somebody who got injured. And if he didn't get injured, there's a chance he might get drafted. I don't think he will because of the injury, because he missed so much time. But this is a guy who was supposed to be a 3rd or 4th round pick, talking to scouts. And that was a real disappointment when he went down with injury. Burke Hood, we saw he took a massive step last year, the goaltender. He might get drafted. So there are some young guys in the pipeline. And then Blake Chorney, he's a guy who, if you talk to WHL scouts, he's somebody that could be in that conversation for WHL Rookie of the Year, especially because he doesn't have to deal with Landon DuPont just, steamrolling everybody next year. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, especially because they've had so much change in that organization. We'll see who they bring in as coach. We'll see if it's a coach GM situation or if it's split. I'm always a fan of the split because that way you can have eyes in the sky and eyes on the bench. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to look forward to in Vancouver, and we'll also see if Mazden Leslie actually goes to Kelowna or if he continues on to Bowling Green next year. So that'll be another interesting kind of Giants themed story to watch next year.
Yeah, is there anybody else that you might hear or you have heard of that might be going to the NCAA, or is there anybody that you could expect to?
Well, yes, there's a lot of names that we've heard.
Obviously not name dropping any.
Yes. There are a couple of names in the East that we've heard. There are a couple, let's just put it like this. There's some players in the WHL who are going to be drafted in the first 3 rounds who are projected to go to the NCAA next year. So this is going to be very interesting exactly how this works in the future, because I wrote an article about this recently where like CHL teams are in a weird situation where it's like they can't plan 2-3 years in the future, because let's just say you draft a guy 5th overall. Like I'm not like, this is just a hypothetical. I don't know this, I'm not saying 5th overall because it's a thing. Let's say you draft a guy 5th overall, right? He plays 2 years in the WHL. So he plays his rookie year with like 10, 15 games, whatever, and plays 1 full year. So you're starting to build around him, and then he decides to go to the NCAA, right? Like and then you have to start from scratch. Like Victoria. Victoria is a good example. We're building for next year. Verhoff and Reshny are now gone. Like, what do you do now when you're Victoria? Like, you went all in. You brought in some guys that were going to kind of help them next year. Now those guys have to become the top players. So it's complicated. We'll just put it like that. But yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what the CHL does, because I don't, I had a lot of pushback on this where I was saying maybe the CHL makes a rule that says like you have to play X amount of seasons, which I will put out. If they put it in a contract and a player signs it, it's enforceable. As much as people want to argue it's not, it is enforceable, because that's how contracts work. Like that's how student athlete contracts work. So you could do that but I don't know if they would. The WHL might just have to live and CHL might just have to live in like a BCHL type world where they know that that when players are at their peak, they might lose them. So, I mean, it's all complicated now. So we'll see exactly how it all shakes out.
Well, speaking with the NCAA, and now that transfer is available, do you think that maybe this could help smaller guys? We talked about Cameron Schmidt, but smaller guys across the CHL, if they're not ready at the moment, if they need to go develop, like, do you think they could succeed against these 23, 24, 25-year-olds, if so, in college, but also develop?
Well, anytime you're playing older competition and stronger competition, there's going to be an element of development there. We'll put it like this: the CHL is the top junior league in the world, but the NCAA is another level. Like CHL, you're playing against 6'6" guys, but they're all like 19. When you're playing against a 6'6", 220-pound 23-year-old, it's a lot different than somebody at the same size at 19, because they know how to check differently, they know how to defend differently. So there is a greater development at the NCAA level compared to the CHL. But I mean, if you're looking at this and players are going to the CHL and you have players that are sticking around, like maybe Cameron Schmidt doesn't go to the NCAA and he decides to continue to play in the CHL and develop, that means more minutes for Cameron Schmidt, right? Like that means more development and then when he's ready, he might be able to go to the NCAA. So, but smaller players excel at the NCAA as well. But I think it's like, you're going to see, if more of the bigger name stars start to leave, you're going to see more minutes for like middle 6 guys, which is going to help their development. So in the end, it might benefit the CHL from a drafting perspective. Like we might see players that we didn't see previously drafted get their opportunity because they're getting more exposure. But overall, the NCAA is a higher development league. So we'll kind of see how that plays out.
Well, you talked about Landon DuPont a tiny bit there a few minutes ago. Did you get to see much of him this season?
So I saw him a couple times. I went down to Everett to see him as well. I talked with him on the phone before his first game. I mean, he's special. Like you don't see 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds do what he's able to do. And what I was surprised is, Everett, we all know, is like a powerhouse defensive team. Like they're a team that if you can't skate, you can't play with them. Like I was surprised at how rounded out his defensive game was, because obviously when we watched him in the CSHL, it was all about like, oh look, he's breaking records from points wise, and you don't really pay attention to the defensive side of the game in the CSSHL a lot because it's just so there's not a ton of structure. Like they try to install structure, but it's kind of like the AHL where it's not the most structured league, so you don't necessarily look at the defensive play. But like this is a guy who was, playing over 25 minutes a night. He was matching up against the top guys. He was on the penalty kill. He was getting into it physically. He wasn't afraid to back down from older players who were, trying to take shots at him. Like I was at that Edmonton Everett game where somebody, one of the Edmonton 20-year-olds took a shot at him, hit him from behind into the glass. Dupont just jumps up, tries to get into the scrum afterwards. This is a high competitive player. This is a player who is going to dominate the WHL for the next couple years, and who's going to go first overall in 2027. So he's going to be the next great defenseman. We know that already. And Kamloops connection. He's a big fan of Denny's, so there's maybe one day he can get that Denny's money for a sponsorship.
Well, yeah, he's definitely got a little bit of his dad in him too, as you alluded to with the scrums there. He did lead Everett I shouldn't say he led Everett, but he was a crucial piece in their playoff run. Do you think if they added maybe a couple more pieces this upcoming season, they could kind of go for it all?
Well, their big issue was that Carter Bear got injured. And then Tyler McKenzie got injured. So, like, with Everett, it was more about injury. Like, you can't replace Carter Bear. With Everett, it was more about just injuries and that, like, so we'll see what they do. I know that they've already added a couple pieces in the offseason, but with this new, CHL rule, maybe they say, listen, we need to go full force because we might lose players. Like, I don't know anybody from Everett who might be jumping, but who knows, right? Like, so Everett is definitely a team that I could see going full throttle, especially because this season, I know that they are at the WHL is adding Penticton, but because Kelowna is hosting it, there's an additional spot to make the final. But I could definitely see Everett going full force this year, especially if Carter Bear comes back. Like, I don't think Carter Bear is going to make the NHL this year, just because I think that there are, he had an Achilles injury. So I think even if he comes back during training camp, which is projected, I don't know if he's we'll have to see how his skating is.
Right.
But I mean, they still have Terrence Smith. I think he's probably coming back. They have some strong players in the pipeline, thanks to the Kamloops Blazers, that Olin Zellweger trade, where they got a top 5 pick this year, right? And they got Dupont, and they almost got Maddox Schultz. So Everett's in a really good position. Their coach is really good with the players. Their players really align with the coach, and it's that Everett mentality where it's like, we're just going to be the best skating team. We're going to just make everybody's life hell, and we're going to probably win the U.S. division. So I'm really excited to see what Everett does. But I mean, Dupont's going to take another step forward. Like, Dupont hit 100 points this year, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it can happen. You talked about Penticton. What can you expect about them as an expansion team?
Well, I talked to Fred Harbison, the GM and coach. I think he's also the president. Just shortly after the announcement was made, like, you can see what type of team they're building. They built through the expansion draft, so they brought in some talented players. They kind of have a balanced lineup. I'm not sure. He did talk about how they're bringing in some players from the BCHL team. We're not 100% sure on which players are coming over, but that Penticton team was a unit in the BCHL. Like, even Harbison said it, like, they're not going to, have an 800 win percentage in the WHL, but they're going to be competitive. This BC division is going to be very interesting how it shapes up next year, because like we said, Victoria could take a step back because they've lost so many players. Kelowna, we already know they're going to go all in. Prince George is going to be losing, Riley Height, Cohen Ziemer, like a lot of their core. What is Prince George? So I think there's an opportunity for Penticton to make the playoffs in their first year just because of how the BC division is shaped up. So I guess we'll see how they proceed in year one.
Yeah, and then once you make the dance, it's an open ballroom floor. So who knows what happens in the playoffs, I guess.
Yeah, I watched Vancouver take down Everett 8-1 seed, so you never know.
Yes, sir. I watched the Halifax Mooseheads dismantle the Drummondville Voltigeurs this year, so that was great to watch. Colton,
Okay.
is there
I got a
anything you wanted
question.
to touch on?
Yeah. Tom Willander. He officially signed. What can you talk about? What can you say about Willander?
Well, like Willander, we're not 100% sure if he's going to start in the AHL and like learn the system. So if this deal was done earlier, and we can go back and forth on what happened with this. Like it was everything points to that this was like Schedule A bonuses and like Canucks internal cap situation. But if he signed earlier, he would have been on this Abbotsford roster, like in the playoffs.
Right.
But because he signed late, he didn't want to. The answer from his agent was, this Abbotsford team, these players have deserved the opportunity. We don't want Willander coming in and like messing with the chemistry potentially and taking a spot away from somebody. So I get that, just let him rest, let him train for next season. But if you're looking at him long term, this is a guy who's going to fit into the Canucks top four. He's going to be like the second, depending on what happens with Quinn Hughes, he'll be on the power play in the future. He is pro ready. He's great into the transition game. He's really improved his defensive game, and he's smart offensively. So, this is the type of player that you don't trade, because he's going to have a lot of he's going to be very impactful in the future. So I guess we'll see kind of how his development goes. But I would not be surprised if what they do is they play him 20 to 25 games this season, and then he's a full-time member in 2026, 27, and then they just let him kind of marinate in the AHL, because let's put it like the Canucks defensive roster is stacked at the moment. Like they've created a logjam, and you even have like a guy like Kudryavtsev pushing for a spot. Like Willander will be in that, like, he has a higher ceiling than Mancini, but like Mancini might be higher on the depth chart right now just based off of development wise. So, we'll see exactly what happens. We'll see if like what's going to happen with Myers in the future. What's going to happen is Derek Forbort going to resign? Are they going to start moving some of these defensive pieces around? So if he doesn't start the season, Canuck fans there's no need to freak out if he doesn't start the season in the NHL. It's more of a slow process, and the Canucks are in a position where they can do that. And it's better to over marinate in the AHL than be thrown into the NHL and drown. So that's something to also keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think I was pretty high on Tom Willander this year at the World Juniors. He had his name all over that tournament, and I think he's a player. I mean, Axel Sandin Pellikka was also there for Sweden, but Tom Willander was a key piece for that Swedish team, and I think he could definitely play a key role next year. Not depth-wise for the Canucks, but if he's in the AHL, I think he would develop really well, and I don't think it would take him that long to develop to a AHL level player.
Yeah. He's a good player. Like I said, he has top four potential at the NHL level. Like, I think when they drafted him, they drafted him with the idea that he was going to be Quinn Hughes' partner. Like, I get that sense. We'll see, because like I know that they want to play Hronek and Hughes on different pairs. So I got the vibe that maybe that's kind of how they were looking long term. But yeah, we'll see exactly what happens. Like they were playing Mancini with Hughes at the end of the season. Myers played with Hughes for a lot of the season. So we'll see exactly how they structure this decor. And if they do end up trading Hughes to Detroit, maybe we get an Axel Sandin Pellikka Tom Willander pairing one day. So we'll see exactly what happens.
Yeah, the chemistry on that pair, I'd say, would be maybe the best in the league.
Oh yeah. Well, anytime you have countrymen that you grew up playing with, Usually those create some pretty good bonds.
100%.
One more player to touch on before we let you go, and that is Basil Sansonins. And I probably butchered his first name, but let's talk a little bit about him, because he obviously was just at the Memorial Cup with Rimouski, and not the showing that Rimouski wanted to have ultimately. But he seems like he's been good. He represented Switzerland at the World Juniors as well. What do you make of Sansonins?
I like his toolkit. Sansone's, like, I talked to him during development camp last year, and that was when he was projected, or that's when he thought that he was going back to the NL in Switzerland.
Okay.
So, and then that all changed like 2 days after I talked to him. So I don't know if he knew that it was that the CHL thing was going to happen, or if he was called on the day and they were like, listen, you have this opportunity. But he's going to be going back to Switzerland next year because this was a 1-year loan. And he's going to be playing against tougher, older competition. And I think when you look at him, the best case scenario when it comes to Sansones is he's like a bottom pair penalty killing defenseman. Like, he's big and he has some physical attributes to him. Like, he can play a physical game. He's not going to generate offense. Like, we saw that at the Memorial Cup. He didn't have a shot on goal. He had one, I think the only time I remember him directing a puck on net was he shot it and his own teammate blocked it and then created a chance himself or something around there. Like, but he needs to become a little bit faster. He needs to become a little bit more positionally sound, but overall he has those tools that, he can be a solid defenseman at the pro level. We'll see if he comes over to the AHL. I don't think he'll come over next year. I think he'll play in the NL one more year at least, but he needs to develop that offensive game. Because even in the NHL, like, if you look at defensive defensemen, like even Marcus Pettersson, for example, like, that's a guy who is a defensive defenseman by the name, or Derek Forbert. Like, these guys still produce shots. They still produce some level of offense. So that's the next step for Sansones, if he can start generating more shots, even if it's just like getting pucks on net from the point. Like, I know that we talk about how pucks from the point are like ineffective, but if you can get a slap shot from the point and you can kind of get it down low where the goalie has to create a rebound, then that's a positive play. So he just has to add that he has to keep developing. And I think playing against older competition in the NL next year will be a big advantage for him.
Right on.
Well, Adam, we thank you for coming on. This was a great episode. Almost an hour of some great hockey talk. Learned a lot about the WHL. We definitely have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Sounds good, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Have a good one, Adam. All right, Colton, how's it going?
Good. You got a score prediction for tonight or what?
Well, I was going to say, the last time I did that, I got it absolutely terribly wrong. I said Connor McDavid 3-2 with the game winner. It was not that. So this time I'm going to go down in the woodwork. I'm going to go down the lineup and just say Adam Henrique is going to score the game winner, and it's going to be a 4-2 win for the Oilers.
I like it. I'll say 3-2 Oilers with a Boosh bomb winning it.
Boosh bomb. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, did you see the picture of Jake Wallman absolutely giving it to Thomas Nosek as from a side angle after he flipped the puck out? That was hilarious.
Yeah, very funny stuff. Wallman is a character.
Well, fellas, we thank you for tuning in again. We know a lot of you are going to be tuning out and heading on over to the sheet. Colton, I know you're probably going to have to do the same thing here in a few minutes, but we thank you for tuning on. Next Monday, I won't be able to be here. Colton will be running a show today or on Monday, but it'll be a solo episode. I've started a new job in Halifax, so I'll be tuning in, but Colton will be running the show, but we'll be back Monday. Next week, we've got a great lineup of guests coming back, so don't miss out. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, GDT Live. It's been a great one. We'll be back.